Hi, welcome to another episode of I Mustache You Something. I've got my good friend who I think she wouldn't accept this, but I would say that she's family. She'd say this crazy
Well,
guy.
that's better. That's better because I had no choice.
So I didn't want to open myself up to be insulted, but I just walked right into it as usual. So Mira and I grew up in St. Abraham, Long Island. So if you've seen the recording of Jesse Newman and I meeting on the bus stop, and Jesse being one of my best friends at school, Mira and I met at church, and she was one of my best friends at church. And we go way, way, way back. And she now lives in Egypt because she is the founder and what's your title over there? Is it?
Executive director.
Okay, I always want to make sure I don't get it wrong. So
Don't
she's
forget the executive part.
yes, she's the founder and executive director of the Littlest Lamb, and I love lamb. And it's a orphanage in the Cairo area. So it's just northeast of the Cairo city center. It's a beautiful place, and when we travel to Egypt, we have the blessing of staying there with Mira and all of the kids. I'm friends on Facebook with some of the kids, and I get interesting questions and messages from them. But it's really a beautiful, wonderful place, and I'm so proud of Mira for having started this place. So Mira, welcome.
Thank you.
So what do we
This is my first recorded Zoom call.
really?
Mm-hmm.
What do you like? Been under a rock? What's happening?
I mean, unless they're recording without me knowing.
No, like you'll see kind of like a little thing,
Oh
right?
yeah, no, this is my first. Yeah, I see it. This is the first time anyone wanted to record me.
Wow. I'm shocked by that. You're such an interesting person.
Yeah,
Huh?
not many people think so.
Really? So do they think you're boring, or do they think that you're controversial? Like, why are they not recording?
I'm going with the whole controversial thing.
That I believe, because you're not at all boring.
Yeah.
You're not at all boring.
Loose cannon.
I mean, listen, I think that if we are really honest with ourselves, the only normal people are the people you don't know very well. And you just happen to be very transparent. Like, and people tell me this all the time. They're like, we want you to be yourself, but just not right away. I'm
Right.
like, why? Like, let's just cut to the chase. If this is going to work, it's going to work. If it's not going to work, then let's figure it out quickly. I don't need to waste your time. You don't need to waste my time. You say, I don't like you at all. And I say, no, that's true of most people. Don't worry. It's okay.
Yeah.
But when you waste your time and pretend to be a nice person and pretend this, and then 6 months later, like, this guy's crazy. Yeah, like you didn't know that? Like, we've known that for a while. So, at least you're upfront about it. I think that's very healthy and appropriate.
Thank you.
So I think we had mentioned something that we share, is that even though we've been around for a long time, and I won't mention our ages here because I don't know about you. I'm very sensitive about it. Like, I try to convince myself I'm still in my 20s.
Yeah.
Like maybe late 20s, but like that's as far as I'm willing to entertain. Um, it still feels like we're trying to figure out kind of who we are. And we talked about a little bit how, you're in Egypt, and you weren't born there, right? Like, you were born in
New York.
New York, and I was born in Egypt. And you're going to make fun of the fact that I was born in a suit, but I'm proud of it, and can make fun of it if you want. Well, you're gonna make. I don't need. You don't need my permission.
I don't make fun of it.
Is this because we're being recorded?
I don't make fun of it. Us UTs are the best people.
Okay. That's a very nice thing to say where you're being. I didn't realize you were going to be so polite, but that's fine. I will accept that. But you know, I was born there and I left when I was 5. And
then you went to Puerto Rico.
Yes, I went to Puerto Rico. Are you going to make fun of that?
No.
No, not that either. I didn't know that there was a well-behaved version of Mira. That's really interesting. So let's see if that lasts.
How long is this thing?
Long enough for me to wear you down.
I'm 7 hours ahead, so it's already been a long day.
So, you know, which one of us is more Egyptian? Does it matter? So, why don't we start by just giving us your reflections on what it means to you to be Egyptian, and like, you know, how Egyptian can someone be, and what does that mean?
I think we spend too much time trying to identify ourselves. And I think that's the problem. I think it's like there's this question that people get to, or a crisis, or, you know, who am I? And how do you define yourself? Do you define yourself by your race, religion, gender, orientation? Like, how do you identify yourself? Where you live, your occupation, your marital status, you know, whether you're a parent or not. And I just think there's so much time spent on that. And I don't think it's an important question. I think it's just, I am who I am. And you know, cliche, we're all human. You're Egyptian as you want to be. Your parents were born there. I mean, if you take a 23andMe test, you might not be 100% Egyptian. You might be this, you might, like, even those 23andMe's, I never felt the need to take one, because it doesn't define me. You know, all these experiences define me, and all these things define me. And, you know, my faith is my faith. What I do is what I do. What I believe is what I believe. And I don't think it matters. Is that you or me ringing? Oh. Yeah. So I just think too much time is spent on that. I think it's important to know what you believe, especially when forming any sort of partnership, whether it's a relationship partnership, whether it's a business partnership, any commitment. You know, even my commitment to start this place. If I thought that this is what I wanted and this was my beliefs, and then later on I developed different beliefs, you know, you're kind of in a bad situation. Same thing with forming a marital partnership. If you base a partnership based on mutual beliefs that are congruent with each other, and then later on that changes, or you thought that's what you believed, but it's not what you believed, and now, you know, you two can't live together anymore, can't form this partnership anymore. You start a business with someone, or a nonprofit with someone, and believe that you're on the same page and you have the same beliefs, and then the beliefs change. I think that's the only time that it's really important to know what your beliefs are, when you're building something with that belief as the foundation.
So you mentioned belief. Is there anything else that kind of forms a building block of this core identity? Because if it's not, you know, your heritage, right? If we're gonna exclude that as a thing.
Well, no, I just think it's the most, it's the only thing that I think that you actually like really need to know and understand, because it can cause problems not understanding. But, you know, people generally, almost everyone knows their heritage, from the time that they can comprehend that, they understand their heritage. And it's you know, it's does it define you? Does it, I don't know. I've never thought about it that way. It's just like I'm Egyptian, therefore I have a connection to the culture. I happen to like the culture. It happens to match my personality. Sometimes I feel I was like born in the wrong spot in the US. You know, and it can be as much of who you are or as little as who you are. I mean, if I didn't like Mulakaya, am I less of an Egyptian than you? If, you know, like
I have some
I
strong
didn't
feelings
like the,
about Mufaya, but
yeah, it's like if I didn't like the music, if I didn't, you know, and if I go and if I'm Egyptian, but I was somehow sent to Mexico at birth and grew up in Mexico, I would probably, you know, would I then be Mexican if I grew up thinking I was Mexican? You know, I don't know. It only matters also because of people's perceptions of that, you know. And I'm sure people who, you know, I'm sure Black people will be able to speak more on that. Is the color of their skin becomes an issue when people perceive them in a certain way because of the color of their skin. So it's a lot of it is perception, and self-perception comes from perception, you know, other people's perception. If I have some sort of you know, skin disorder, and I can't see myself, I will be as people respond to me. You know, if I live in a place where everybody else has the skin disorder, it's not an issue.
hmm, that's interesting. So it's not the skin disorder itself, it's the otherness that results from that skin disorder.
Yeah.
So one of my friends here from the Boston area, his name's Mark Mitry, and Mark, you know, taught me something a few years ago that I thought was interesting. He goes, part of our identity, maybe not our whole identity, but at least part of our identity is I am who I think that you think that I am.
Mm.
Right. So that kind of rings true in kind of what you're saying, that it's not just who I think I am, it's and it's not just your perception of me, it's my perception of your perception of me. So you're saying to a certain extent we have to ignore that, right? So if someone says, you know, Mira, you're not Egyptian enough to, you know, run an orphanage, right? If you say that you're going to take care of these kids, then, you know, they're Egyptian kids and you know, they should be raised by someone who's Egyptian and understands them. And someone else perceiving you as not being Egyptian enough to run an orphanage in Egypt, you say to a certain degree we should reject that.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Now, do you think that everyone's going to be able to do that to the same extent that you have? Like, is that something that on a cognitive level and on an emotional level
I mean,
people
I
are?
think boxes are convenient. People like boxes. I mean, or the day before elections, and I've been trying to avoid the news as much as possible, but it seems there's just such a focus on how we're different, and everyone wants to put you in one of two boxes now. It's like there can't even be like a third box, um, which is just so absurd. And then it's like the crazy thing about what's happening is if I'm in box A, box A believes X about politics and one about COVID, and box B believes Y about politics and two about COVID. But what if I believe X about politics and two about COVID? It's like, no, it's like,
You're not
what?
right.
How is Egypt the saner place to be right now? How am I talking to people in New York City and saying, you got to get out of there? You got to come to Cairo. It's crazy. I'm worried about you over there.
Do you remember the conversation about violence in Egypt?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
You remember this? And then you're like, have you heard of Chicago?
people are like, what do they think about COVID here? I was like, you know what they think about COVID? They think what they think. They don't think what their political party tells. It's so crazy. It's so crazy.
So
boxes. People like boxes, and they don't like to mix and match the boxes. That's the latest thing. No. You can't wear a mask and tell me that you like Trump.
So I think it's interesting that you're in Egypt and you're expressing a sense of individualism that is attributed to the West, right? This idea that I think for myself, right, is attributed to the Enlightenment and is attributed to Western thought to say, I don't necessarily need to align myself with a group that agrees with me and validates my thinking, right? And this came up in another one of my conversations with someone, how, you know, in the East, right, traditionally in Asian cultures, you know, it's about us, like who we are, what we believe. And in the West, it's traditionally about who I am, what I believe, right?
Do you remember like those like bishop meetings and stuff where people would send up the secret papers with questions on them?
Yeah.
You know?
I love that.
Everyone wanted to be the guy that sifted through them.
Yeah.
And people would write these questions and be like, Sayyidina, what do we believe about abortion? I'm like, what? How? What? Why are you asking what you believe? What do we believe? Tell me what to think, man. It was so odd to me. It's like, this is it. It's like, you know, you're a Democrat. You got to ask, what do we think about COVID? Is it killing people or is it a scam? Can I believe it's somewhere in between? No. It's either going to take your mother's life tomorrow or it doesn't exist.
Right. You either lock yourself away and never come out of your room, or like, what? No, I'm going to go around hugging people just to make a point and just to show that I'm not afraid. And it's like, why can't you wear a mask and just keep your distance and do stuff outside? Like is is that is that not
mental.
allowed?
It's mental.
So
I don't know if I'm allowed to say it's mental as a social worker, but
probably not.
It's mentally unstable.
I mean, you're talking to me where like Mary, you know, my wife Mary is a social worker also. So Mary all the time will say, "Oh, you're not allowed to say that." I'm like, I'm allowed to mean it, but not say it. Like I mean it, but I say it a different way, and it's fine. I'm like, what's the bigger problem? What I mean, or how I express it? Yeah. Like maybe I'm not a nice person for saying I find this person to be mentally challenged. Like, there's a huge problem with me. Like I should be a nicer person, but how I say it doesn't make me a nicer person.
ما بنقولش.
What's that?
ما بنقولش.
لا I know you love ده مش احنا.
ده مش احنا.
We don't say
these things.
So I think it's interesting that you're saying in Egypt, which is not necessarily Asian, you know, group culture, but still it's more collectivist and it's more relational than, you know, say traditional American culture, which is very individualistic. But you're saying that in an irony of ironies, now Egyptians are allowed to think for themselves about certain things. And because of these...
Well, not about, you know...
No, definitely not about that. But about science and...
Science.
Right, 2 + 2 is 7. Like, they're allowed to say, like, no, I think it's always 4. And, you know, I'm not going to let a political party tell me that, 2 + 2 is sometimes 6. Because if, you know, this other party says that it's 4, they're probably wrong, right? I think that's...
I think they're both wrong.
Oh, one's coming
about
up
the whole COVID about the whole COVID thing. I think they're both wrong.
Okay, so tell me, like, what's
I think it's Not as bad as the Democrats are saying, and a lot worse than the Republicans are saying. But I mean, I'm somewhere in the middle. But I think people should be able to make decisions for themselves. I've been to, I think at least three hotels since then, and I've gotten on 4 planes, 2 international and 2 within Egypt since COVID started. And I see this headline the other day, and it's like, I want to read it to you. And I was just like, I can't stand the media. Let me read this headline to you. I mean, just so flagrant.
I mean, they really don't even try to make sense anymore.
No.
Have you seen that?
Shameless on vacation.
What is this?
Shameless on vacation amid surging coronavirus numbers. These Americans, and there's a photo of them, are traveling internationally for fun, and they're not sorry about it.
I mean, like, I don't understand. Like I agree. I don't feel safe traveling right now. And I was just talking to the kids. I'm like, oh, I can't wait for things to settle down a little bit. Like we can travel, and I get the concern, but one of the things that I have realized is I'm less concerned about who I agree with and more concerned about how they got to where they're going, right? Because if we agree and we say, okay, like we should take precautions, but you got there because the political party said so, I'm going to be like, whoa, hold on a second, right? Or we agree and therefore we're going to beat everybody else over the head with it. It's like, no.
Because once you do that, like someone told me today, I like my beliefs. I don't want to challenge them.
So you don't believe anything, actually, then?
That's what I said. I said, so you don't actually believe them.
You don't actually believe anything. Right. Like you've just been told this is the way that the world is. It's never been challenged.
Yeah.
It's never been considered. So it's not your belief. It's someone else's belief that they told you.
Right. I think that's the thing. It's like, this is the political party I want to believe in, whether it's because I hate the other so much, whatever it is. Like, it's like, right. At this point, it's become like rooting for a sports team. It's like, I think that's when I stopped being a fan of teams. I still love sports and I love, competition. But I think it was that moment that I'm like, why do I hate this guy so much? I liked him 3 months ago. All he did is change his t-shirt. And I think that's why I was like,
remember what you said to Michael Jordan?
I'm mental right now. I just liked him and now I'm booing him, cursing his mother. I've never met his mother.
Do you remember what you said to Michael Jordan?
Yeah.
Tell us the story.
I think it's when he came back from retirement and scored like 60 points against the Knicks.
Yep.
He's going through the tunnel. Remember, my dad's seats were right about. I'm like, you suck, Mike. Why was I so angry? It was a beautiful performance. You suck, as if I could do like,
right.
And he just took 2 steps back from the tunnel and just gave me that like typical shrug and was like, come on. I was like, you're right. I'm an idiot. Who does that?
Like, you're right. No, like,
you're right. I suck. Yeah. Why am I here?
Like, I paid money to come watch you play and embarrass my team. If one of us, like, hopefully neither of us sucks, but if one of us sucks, it's not you. It's not you.
That's what he said with his.
Yeah.
He's Anna? Like, really? Anna about to do.
Were you not watching? Like, did you go to the bathroom? Like, what'd you miss here?
Yeah, that's when I was like, yeah, people just feel the need to belong, and that's what sports are about, and that's what it's not thinking for themselves. It's like, do I appreciate this player? Do I like what he stands for? Do I like his talent? Do I like watching him play, him or her? And but he's no longer wearing my team's t-shirt. And then, at least I followed New York teams because I was a New Yorker, but the people from New York that were like, oh, I love the Vikings. Why do you like the Vikings? I've always liked them since a child. They're not the same anymore. So bizarre. That's how people with these political, I don't know who it was, like Conan or something, that went out in the streets and was like, hey, what do you like about, I don't know what presidential candidate, and said the other candidates' policies, and they're like, yeah, that's why I'm voting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I got a new church uniform that I wear now, which is a Tom Brady Buccaneers jersey. And for
Is Tom Brady on the Buccaneers?
Yeah, so he got traded from the Patriots to the Buccaneers. And because he changed his shirt, now 50% of Patriots fans are Brady fans, and 50% are who needs him? We'll be just fine without him. Like, he's a traitor. Meanwhile, he got pushed out by the organization, right? It was like a Jordan-esque type of thing where it's like, okay, you've ceased to be valuable to this organization. You can, retire now. And he's like, I'm not ready to retire. And they're like, well, you're not playing here anymore. So now, just by wearing this shirt, so I wear this shirt to support you, and I wear that shirt basically just to troll Patriots fans, and they get so upset. And if I'm going to be honest, my favorite part is when they get upset with each other, because like one of them will say, how can you wear that? He's a traitor. And someone else will go, I still like him. You can like the Patriots and still like Brady. And I just sit back and I go, quarrel amongst yourselves.
I like reminding them that Tom Brady doesn't care about you. If you got fired, he wouldn't care. If your wife cheated on you with the gardener, he wouldn't care. He wouldn't care.
Yeah. So one thing that I did read that I found interesting was that people reject science and logic when the science and the logic threatens their identity.
Mm-hmm.
And so.
But again, that's because you put too much weight on the identity.
So this is why I think it's important to come back to that.
I think, therefore I am, Isn't that what that's about? Your beliefs? I don't know. No one really understood what he meant. I swear he didn't understand what that meant. He's like, people are going to talk about this for 900 years.
I mean, so I believe that was Blaise Pascal, and I believe that he was one of the early Enlightenment thinkers that started shifting us away from this we believe to this I believe, right? And you can follow that trail of logic, from Pascal to Kant, all the way to Nietzsche, and this sense of extreme individuality. So Nietzsche will say, my will to power, my desire to be my own boss, is what gives me life. And this vitalism of who I am became sort of like the extreme representation of that individualism. And I think if you ascribe to that as an extreme, I think it becomes problematic. And I think if you reject that altogether, right, and you pretend that it's not real, and you literally let yourself be brainwashed by whatever institution, whether it be a political party or a faith community or a family, like this is what we do in our family, and like nobody deviates from this, regardless of what outside influence comes in and tells you, hey, this is how you have to be in order to be compliant with the program and to be one of us, right? I think it becomes problematic. But I agree with you when you say like people want that, right? They want the color by number life where you just like, I believe this because I was told to believe it, and it's just easier that way. And I think that the people in positions of leadership, are well-meaning, right? I don't think for the most part, they have malintent in trying to tell people like, these are the best practices and this is what we believe and this is why we believe it. And it's out of concern for these people to tell them like, okay, like, you know, this is how to color within the lines and this is how to stay out of trouble. And I think going to one extreme or another makes it problematic. But how do you find that balance, right? Like, because I know that, you know, as someone who runs an organization, you're a big believer in culture, right? And in group culture, and like, this is how we do it at the Littlest Lamb, right? And people have to kind of stay on message and on. Still there, Mir? So the Wi-Fi connection there cut out for a second, but Mira's back. And the question I was getting at was, you as someone who runs an organization, right? So you run Bird Rock, you run Littlest Lamb. You believe in a group culture, right? You believe this is what we do and this is how we do it. At what point, or what's the best way to strike a balance between what we believe and what I believe? Like, how does someone navigate that where they submit enough to an organization so that
Well,
they're
it's tricky because a lot of, some staff here, coming from a conservative culture, don't believe that kids should just be who they are, and they should turn into adults, the kind of adult that they want to be. One of my favorite things written ever was Khalil Gibran in The Prophet on children, when he wrote, "Your children are not your children."
Mm.
And it's tough because they came out of you and all, but they're it's a very spiritual thing, and it's just, people want their kids to be what they want to be, and of course I want these kids to be certain things. But it's broad, and maybe I shouldn't even be broad about it, but I want them to be successful, I want them to contribute, I want them to be healthy, and I want them to be happy. um I want them to be ethical, and maybe even that's asking for too much. Maybe it's tricky because they're not our children, and we're taking them, or we're agreeing to take them, or we're accepting them out of their environment, and we're putting them in a completely different environment, and we're saying, hey, here you can be yourself. And I think the hardest realization is some of them don't want to be in this environment. Some of them want to go back to their old environment. Some of them don't want to be successful, don't want to be, and some people even don't want to be happy. And that's choices and decisions. And we struggle with it as a staff every day of, did this child make that decision, or is this child too young to make a decision that can affect the rest of their lives? Can a 10-year-old child say, I don't want to go to this international private school that you're sending me to? Is that child able to make that decision? Should we force this child to, maybe she is going through something that we don't know. Maybe she doesn't feel like they should be in this school, that they should be back in an environment that's similar to their siblings or their cousins or their parents or whatever it is. So we struggle with it on every level, every day. How much should we enforce? How much should we push? Of course, the obvious is, no matter what you've been through, you don't have the right to inflict pain on anyone else. That's a clear thing. But what about the pain they inflict on themselves? What about horrible decisions they make every day? They don't want to go to school. They don't want to study. They don't want to they don't want to play a sport. They don't want to, and it's just, we're banging our heads because we're like, we see where you came from. You've got sports instructors and music teachers and tutors and art teachers and opportunity and clean environment, safe environment, education, everything. And it's just like, you want to go back to hell? So it's very, very, I don't have an answer. I don't have an answer about individuality and choice and identity. And, we don't do anything crazy. Like we don't have like a bird rock song. We don't have like because I think that's just a little too moldy. It's just molding. And I think I'm very uncomfortable with that. We don't tell them you should be proud because you're from Bird Rock. We are Bird Rock. We don't do any of that, but it's, look at where you were, look at where you are, and make a decision. And we just have to accept that the decision isn't always going to be what we want or why we did this. Not sure if that answered your question, but there's something that's been on my mind lately in dealing with like a particular child who's 10.
I mean, it's a powerful statement to say that I'm giving you the freedom to choose to fail. At least as I define success and failure.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you that it's not just as adoptive, parents, but as biological parents, that's a struggle, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, like imagine bad Bashar, Jacob has a disease and it's so easily curable. He's just got to take this, one pill every day. Maybe the pill has some side effects or whatever. Maybe it means he can't play soccer for a year or two. And if he doesn't do it, then he'll be, handicapped for the rest of his life. You're not going to give him that choice. But what if Jacob's now 35? Are you going to give him that choice? So at what point, and this is what we discuss with this 10-year-old, is at what point do we say this person has made her own choice? Is she capable of making a choice like that can affect her for the rest of her life? What are we saying? 16? Are we just placing an arbitrary number now? 18, 21, when the brain develops, 25. I don't know when the brain develops. At what point are you saying, okay, this person can now make her own decision? At what point are you going to let Jacob decide whether he's going to take his chemo treatment? But what if it's your mom? She has a right to say, no, this is how I want to live out my life. What if the person has a below average IQ? What if the person is so depressed and suicidal and isn't thinking straight? So at what point do we force our views, opinions on these people, whether they're kids or not?
Yeah.
Are we going to let this 10-year-old make a decision that will affect her the rest of her life? This is it. This is a turning point. And this is literally something we are faced with. And we were faced with yesterday. She's a few weeks from 10. And she wants to do something. I mean, when I say like wants to, like how do you physically force someone to do something? Yeah. A lot of children here defy us, but only one like physically defies us. Like physically defies us.
Mm.
So, it's got two sides. It's people make their own decisions, and maybe this isn't the life she wants, and maybe we're imposing this life on her. Maybe this isn't what life is about, success and a nice, clean environment. But then she's a child, safety, safety and opportunity, and who knows?
I think what you're hitting on is what some people that are in positions of power, influence, decision-making kind of struggle with, is they see that they have the ability to serve and to protect. And again, like for sure, like we can think of examples of some people that aren't well-meaning, or some people that, it's not about their work or their service, it's about them. let's exclude them for a second, and we're just talking about the people with good intent and the people that are just trying to do their best with limited experience, limited information. A lot of times they feel cornered that, okay, if I don't do this, then it's going to have consequences on the people that I'm responsible for, right? As a, you know, member of a family, that applies to people in my household. As people that are in charge of a faith community or a work community or a community of governance. I mean, like, one of the most challenging political environments that I've seen is actually town politics. Like, people here in town have like very, 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 very strong beliefs about this is how the school system should be run. This is where we
Is
should
it
be.
like the show Community? Not Community, the Parks and Rec?
I don't know Parks and Rec, but our town politics have actually turned into their own reality TV show. Um, so, very strong opinions, right? And again, like, it's very hard to judge intent, and it's very hard to say, oh, this person just wants X. No, we don't know that. But if you assume good intent, you see that like, some people are playing by a completely different set of rules, and what they would consider to be a good outcome or a healthy way of structuring our relationships to each other, and in your case, a a healthy upbringing for this kid, right? Someone's got to dial up or dial down, what we decide for you and what you're allowed to decide yourself. And like, it's on a spectrum, right? Like, yes, maybe on this far end of the extreme where like the kid's not allowed to do anything at all is clearly unhealthy, and this other end where like they're just allowed to do whatever they want with no supervision at all, that's unhealthy. But like, in this gray in the middle, it's really hard. And when you're the one responsible for it, whether you're responsible for one person, 50 people, 5,000 people, or 250 million people, it's tough, and it's tough to figure out where that line is. But how would you advise someone else in a position of leadership to be thoughtful about where to draw that line? Because you're clearly struggling with it, but in that struggle you're learning something. So how would you
Well, I
advise?
mean, I'm talking kids,
Yeah.
just kid. I mean, with adults, I don't think you should ever really interject
Okay.
unless you're their, like, healthcare proxy.
I mean, there would be some people that would disagree with you and I and would say, no,
We know
even
what's best.
right, yeah, like, we're doing it for their own good,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is a discussion for another time. But if we're just going to focus on kids, parents, whatever it is
I
we're
mean, it
talking about.
depends. It depends. It's very, very, very tricky. I mean, you know that team sports, I forgot the statistics off the top of my head, but it's like, girls who play team sports are X amount less likely to commit suicide, or X amount less likely to get breast cancer, or X amount, whatever it is. And team sports are good for girls. Like, you see the science, you believe it in your heart. Your kid doesn't want to play a team sport. At what point do you push them? And maybe you're going to push them and they're going to love it, or are you just, imposing yourself on them? I don't have an answer. I don't have an answer. Um, Very tricky. Do you get involved in every decision, in what they eat, what they put into their bodies, everything they say, the friendships they form, the decisions they make, how much do they want to read of their free time or play with the iPad? Do they want to draw, or do they want to keep whatever it is? I definitely see too much involvement these days. But like you're saying, kids can't think that they just get everything they want. They have to be told that there are consequences. I don't know. I don't have an answer. I'm just trying to do the best I can. But some kids really, really give us a run for it. Really give us a run for it. And then I start to wonder, am I imposing Littlest Lamb's vision and mission on them? They didn't choose this. Maybe this is too much pressure.
I suppose this is the point in our conversation where I mustache you something, and I wonder if the heart of our conversation is, as someone who is responsible for the lives of others in some way and struggling with the decisions that you make, and wondering if you're making the right one. How does that make you more or less compassionate to someone else who has a similar charge or responsibility?
What are you getting at, Mina?
I think
Spit it out.
I struggle with this myself because I have a very high standard for people in positions of leadership. And
I'm not in a position of leadership.
how not?
What, you mean me as a leader to these children, or me as a leader to the staff?
Both.
No, I'm not in a position of leadership with these. Would you call I'm not their adopted mother, but I'm just saying, would you call an adopted mother in a position of leadership?
I mean, you set the tone and you set the culture for an organization that raises them. And you take that responsibility very seriously. And you want to do it to the best of your ability. And within the scope of responsibility that you have, you say, if I can't do this, maybe nobody's going to do it perfectly. But if I'm not committed to doing this as best as I possibly can, I'm not going to bother doing it. That's the standard. Now, when I look at someone else, right, and this is why you and I get along, is because I look at you and I say, I admire that, right? Because you're not going to move to Egypt and build this thing just to be like, let them do whatever they want. No, you're going to go to Egypt and build this thing and expect yourself and everyone around you to care. And when you look at X organization down the street that's responsible for kids and doesn't seem to have that same level of rigor or responsibility, there's two ways to interpret that. One, they don't care as much as I do, and therefore I have an issue with that. Or they seem to be sharing the same struggles that I do, and therefore I can have some sense of compassion for their failures, the same way that I would hope someone.
I mean, you say you can't judge someone's intentions, but I can. I beg to differ. I think you can.
So tell me more about that, because if that's really where the cutting edge is, where it's a matter of intent, then how does one judge?
Yeah, of course. So I think when and again, I don't have a perfect record, but when I see someone and judge their intention, there's certain things you can judge. I think people take "don't judge" in the wrong way. I don't think it was meant the way that people use it. They take it as "don't give your opinion," mit ulsh, when you see something bad. But someone, I mean, Mina, how would you feel if you heard? I don't get a salary, by the way, so I can say this, without fear. But how would you feel if I took 80% of donations that came to Littlest Lamb?
How would I feel?
Yeah, wouldn't you be like, can't you judge my intentions?
I mean, when it's that egregious, yeah.
Okay, so we can judge if I took $3 million a year, مثلا. You could judge that, right? You could start to be like, wait, why is she doing this? Again, everyone, I don't take a salary, but you can judge that, right?
In the very least, it would not be inappropriate to ask about it and to say, hey, can you explain this? And maybe you have a good explanation, but if I
left 56 kids here with no adult supervision and I'm just out and I'm like, and I left 56 kids here alone. You could judge my intentions.
Right.
And I'm not mentally.
Right. Again, in the very least, it would invite some questioning to be like,
okay, so we could, yes. So you have to say like,
there's a good explanation, but there probably
so
isn't.
certain things like, I'm doing the best I can on this and that, I can definitely, I welcome judgment because how else am I going to get better? If the people closest to me, the people here that work with me, my partners here that are doing this job with me, if they're not like, I don't trust that you're doing this for the right reason. They're judging my intentions. And if that doesn't happen, I don't get better. So we got to stop this. Don't judge me. Please judge me. You don't say I'm a bad person, I'm going to hell, but judge me, question my intentions. And so I think when I see leaders that are doing their best, and again, no one can be sure, but struggling and trying, and that I do have compassion for. But leaders that allow people, especially the most vulnerable people, to be hurt and not laying their life down and making sure that doesn't happen again, I don't have compassion for that. I'm sorry you're in a tough position. It's like, God forbid something happens to your wife, she gets terminally ill. I'll have so much compassion for you. But if you walk out and leave her with the 3 kids, I'm not gonna have compassion for you. It's like, what are you doing, dude? Like, I'm sorry that happened. That sucks. But you signed up for this. And so it's like, I don't have compassion for people that sign up for stuff. And only when it's like, this is why I did it. And then when this is not why I did it, like you didn't marry someone so you could take care of them when they're terminally ill. So when something happens that's not why I signed up for it, you're out, or you're pretending it doesn't exist. I don't have compassion for that. It's like, I didn't sign up for this. All right, well then leave. So that, I think that's when my compassion is like, I can't feel sorry for you. I'm going to have to, I think compassion is limited. And if I have kids being abused, and leaders that are just like, hey, I didn't sign up to be in this position so I could speak out against child sex abuse because it's really awkward for me, or I have issues with this, or I've made these mistakes, or I was a victim and I haven't dealt with it. Whatever the reason is, my compassion is going to go towards victims and future victims who are victims because as a leader, I stayed quiet, or I said it's none of my business, or I said the cost of this is too high, or I said, we all know what I'm talking about. And I know that's why you asked me.
And it's a genuine question because I think there's a constant struggle again that has kind of run its course through our conversation, where the running thread is the individual versus the group, and it keeps coming back. And when it comes to an individual self-actualizing and saying, this is what I believe, I think earlier you said that it's important for that individual before they get into a partnership to define that, right? And once they've gotten into a partnership based on these predefined beliefs or, this sort of declared identity, right? It's much more sticky and it's much more difficult down the road to change that because you've already made the commitment, right? If it's a roommate with a 1-year lease, then it's a 1-year commitment with like some financial penalties, but you can move on. If it's a marriage or if it's a lifelong vocation, or it's children or what have you, that, there's the commitment and then it's open-ended after that, it becomes much more challenging, right? For us to rediscover, right? And to re-evaluate and to recalibrate and say, okay, well, I changed my mind, right? And I think what you're saying is like, sorry, buddy, like you don't, like you had.
Change your mind and get out. Don't
Well,
stay and be like, no, I don't want to deal with this one. This is not what I signed up for.
But you're also saying, like, at least in the case of a spouse where,
Oh, yeah.
Like, to a certain extent, you're not saying, no, you don't get to change your mind. Like,
Well, I'm saying if you do, you're not getting my compassion.
That's fair. Okay.
Not that that's what you're fighting for, but
Right. But at least you're saying that someone should be held to a standard that is not dependent just on what they believe today, but what they believed when they made this commitment.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's in the very least. And the distinction that you're making between a leader that you would consider, and again, like, I think this, that I respect your opinion a lot about, and this, that if you've done this before where you've told me, Mina, I disagree with what you're doing, or I disagree with how you're doing it. And I take that very seriously, right? So it's not a trivial thing for me to say, oh, Mira, what do you think? Like, no, like I genuinely have respect and regard for what you say, but regardless of who's making the judgment, right? What you're valuing is whether the leader is able to take feedback, right? Whether, there's an openness and there's a vulnerability to ask, hey, how can I do this better? So it's not so much whether you necessarily agree with them or whether they've made the right decisions, day to day, but whether they're willing to be corrected.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So
how long have we been talking? People are going to get bored.
This is going to be by far the longest recording.
People are going to get bored.
I thought about that, and I was like, I don't really care if they're still interested. I'm still interested.
Okay.
Like, I like what you have to say, and if someone wants to listen in, they can listen in. Apparently, like the proper length for a podcast or a recording like this is 45 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes. Some of them are 30 to 45 minutes. Some of them are longer. Like, I'm not going to get to 45 minutes and you're in mid-sentence, be like, okay, thanks for coming. Like, I'm still interested in what you're saying. If somebody wants to listen in, great. If they want to break it up over the course of several commutes, great. If they want to listen to the first 10 minutes and post
several commutes,
whatever. I don't really care. Honestly, like, I'm doing this because every single person that I'm interviewing and every person that I'm talking to, I find them compelling and I find them interesting. If somebody else finds them compelling and interesting, great. If they don't, fine. Most likely, more likely than not, one person will listen to this long enough to find something that they don't like, and they'll tell all their friends, oh, go to 57 minutes and listen to what you say. They'll take it completely out of context and get pissed. That's just what happens. That's okay.
Leo's getting antsy.
Oh, you want to wrap up then? Say hi to Leo. Hi, Leo. Hi, Habibi. Hi, buddy. So you made me lose my train of thought, but this was so good.
I know, it's very good, but I'm just always scared that people are going to get bored.
They've been bored for half an hour. I'm not
my gosh.
I'm not
All right.
that concerned.
What do you want? What do you want?
Maybe he has something to say.
Yeah.
You never know. He's self-actualizing. So again, anyone in a position of leadership and anyone in a position of influence and anybody who's responsible for someone else is going to make some good decisions and they're going to make some bad decisions. We try to maximize the good decisions, we try to minimize the bad decisions, right? Some people don't even make that distinction, and we agree that that's problematic. Does it matter who someone takes feedback from?
No.
Okay, tell me more.
Anyone, you can learn from anyone.
Right, but what if I only take feedback from Leo? And I restrict who I take feedback from. Is that okay?
Well, say that again.
So my question is, does it matter if the leader restricts him or herself from who they take feedback from? Right?
No, I think feedback should be from everyone.
Okay. Why?
I think you can learn from everyone, even people that, are just looking for your demise. You could learn from them.
So even if someone delivers a message the wrong way as a leader, you're saying that they still have the responsibility and the opportunity to get better based on that message that might
Well,
not
think about it. Like, you think about what they're saying. If what they're saying is based on reality, if you trust it, look at the content of what's being said, not who's saying it. And even someone that you respect so much can say something and you think about it and you analyze it and you discuss it together, and then it's it could be not good advice or not good criticism, but at least go through it, be honest with yourself.
What if there's not enough time in the day to get feedback from all the different voices that could have an opinion?
I mean, weed it out, like those questions. Put them in categories. Okay, everyone's saying that I don't speak properly. Everyone's saying that that I'm too short fused, or 12 people have told me that. Hey, put them together.
Yeah. So I'll tell you that I'm learning and I'm taking your advice to heart. And I think in places where I have a responsibility, I'm encouraged. And this is something that I try to do, but I will continue to try to do it, which is to focus less on, do I think I'm doing good, but looking around and asking for feedback from others, and taking that into consideration. I think that's an important skill. And I think for you, with the girl that you're struggling with, this almost 10-year-old, I think I'll tell you what I tell a lot of my patients when they're struggling to make a difficult decision, like, they're not sure if they want to have surgery or not. I tell them, like, this is all the information that we have right now. We might get more information later that tells us, oh, we should have done this or we should have done that. But this is what the information that we have now. And with this information, we have to make a decision. And whatever decision we make, because I know we have good intent, because you're trying to do the best thing for you and I'm trying to help you do the best thing for you, whatever we decide, it's the right decision. Because I think in addition to trying to make the best decision possible, there's also this like monkey on our back of like, okay, but what if I make the wrong decision and I screw this kid up forever, right?
Yeah.
But that's not what you want, right? If you had more information, if you knew that you told them left, that they would have gotten eaten by a bear, then you would have told them right. But the problem is we don't get to see what happens, right? Maybe if they went left, they get eaten by a bear, and if they went right, they get eaten by a crocodile. Either way, they get eaten, right? And we
Right.
just knew that. And we can't say, "Oh, I wish we picked the other one." So,
I hear you.
hopefully that gives us a little bit more compassion, at least for ourselves. Because if we are doing all of the things that you suggested, which is to care enough to correct ourselves, care enough to get feedback, care enough to respond to that feedback in an honest manner, we can sleep at night knowing, hey, like I made the best decision possible.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, thank you, Mira. Enlightening as always. Any closing words for the marathon listeners that have made it to the bitter end?
Mary, thank you so much for staying to the end. I miss you, and we'll talk soon.
Actually, I'm 99% sure that if there is one
Not
person
Mary.
who's not going to watch a single one of these, it's Mary.
I would say mom, but no way she's getting through 5 minutes of this.
No.
She's gonna say
Especially 'cause I'm-
mustache al-ahbal da and close it. So
No, she's going to be like, عملتي إيه؟ مع مين؟ لا.
all right, well, what do I win? What do I win from this?
I mean, maybe I'll talk to Ralph longer than I've talked to you, so maybe you win second place.
All right. I just want to win something.
I'll let you know what place you come in, but right now you're
All right.
clear first place.
All right.
Thanks, Mira, and thank you to whoever's still listening.
Bye.